Anyways, sorry for my voice sounding like trash, listener. I'm sure you can tell. Or unless you're Allison, which you probably won't be able to tell. That's fine. I feel like every time I say sorry for this poor audio quality, Nathan, you're always like, yeah, my wife said I don't even know. So
She does.
that's
I don't think anybody knows except for you and your magic ears.
You got magic ears?
He's got magic
Hilariously,
ears. He can hear
I'm
everything.
half deaf.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I don't hear well out of my right ear.
That's why you don't hear my jokes.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. This is episode 37. Maybe. I love that. Like now that we're in the 30s, especially, I have no idea what episode number. We're just in 30 something. So, I am your host KJ, along with hosts Nathan and Patrick. We are the Janchi Show. It is the 3 of us. Nathan, will you explain what Janchi means?
Janchi means to celebrate and feast. And we are doing that with our Korean heritage and discoveries of our Korean adoption and our history and our knowledge of, or lack thereof, of all things Korean. We are trying to discover what we can, and that's what we'd like to do. We'd like to have a little Janchi, a little party, a little celebration. So we are doing that amongst ourselves, and with you fine viewers and listeners.
Yes,
and that was probably much longer of an explanation than it should have been.
It was a little bit long and a little bit slow, but I'll forgive it because it's the morning. Full disclosure, we're recording this in the early morning. It's earliest for Nathan, but it's still early for KJ and Patrick. I started referring to myself. This is the problem with recording with Zoom is I will look to our windows just to like make sure that I've visually said everyone's name. But when I look to my window, I say my name because it's in the bottom left corner of my screen. So I've now started referring to myself in the third person. It's fine. Whatever.
That's fine.
Not pretentious at all.
Yeah. It makes me think of the boulder from Avatar. The boulder.
Oh yeah.
Will crush you with his palm. So it is the month of May. That is Asian and Pacific Islander
Heritage Month.
American Heritage Month. Yeah. There are like so many letters in this thing, but May is our month. If you're Asian American, if you're a Pacific Islander American, May is our month. So hooray, we have a month. Besides all the rest of the months that we're just generally alive and out here living life, but. This is the month where some people are like, hey, we should pay attention to this particular ethnic group or ethnic groups. So, yeah. In our own version of celebrating and highlighting our stories and things, we wanted to take the month of May to do something different. Like we said last episode, we're kind of messing with the show format a little bit, but especially for May, we wanted to really center our stories. So whether that's going through the book club, whether that's centering our interviewees' stories, and not feeling like, oh man, we got to rush through this. So it, is around an hour and a half for episode content. We just want to make sure that we take the time to tell people's stories and celebrate that and center those things without being like, oh, now we got to do a food thing. But we know that food is an important ethos of our show. And so when we come back in June, we are going to have, we're going to do it up big for food. And so we're going to take the month of May and figure that out, how we can do it up big, what that looks like, making sure that it is as fun and as awesome and as wonderful as possible, and hopefully unlock some new things, maybe like Nathan's grilled cheese hotdog, or my kimchi bokkeumbap, or who knows what that'll look like exactly. We don't yet.
It's a surprise.
We're moving to Korea.
You'll have to tune in.
Moving to Korea. Spoiler alert.
We're all gonna take cooking classes,
but only in our
Korea.
kitchens. We're moving
only
to Korea
in our kitchens.
Yep.
Nope. We're leaving our significant others and families, and we're moving together as a trio.
We're starting a Janchi fraternity.
No, just a place where we live together and do like a monastery, like a Janchi monastery. Yeah.
Can I be Daredevil?
You can. I'll give you that.
Thanks. Great.
So we have a really great interview lined up with Katie Cadamatre of Tigerboom Creative from Instagram fame at Tigerboom Creative. I mean, she's probably famous for other reasons, but
in the fashion world,
yes,
in the retail
that's
fashion
find
world,
out.
it seems like.
Yep. So I'm glad that you guys are paying attention because, I mean, not that I wasn't paying attention, but just all of
Just
the
out
information.
yourself not paying attention.
It's not even that. It's just all of the information that I had in my brain is now gone because I just immediately forgot so that I could be fully present with the two of you. I almost said the three of you. God dang it.
See, look. I'm not the only one who rambles here. Look,
I
KJ's
just don't know how to do this when we don't break
We're
into
we're in the morning. It's 10:30,
it's okay.
8:30, and 9:30 respectively.
9:30. Yeah,
How
and only
about
one of us
we-
has had coffee.
Listen to the interview.
Yeah,
Yep.
6 cups of coffee.
Roll
good.
the tape. We're going to the interview. Hurry up. Hurry up, KJ. Get on that. All right.
Quit talking to yourself or about yourself in 3P.
And Nathan
3P.
interviews now.
All right. Now we'll roll it.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show interview portion. We are here with Katie Cadamatre. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you guys for having me.
It's an early morning recording, so we apologize if we are a little slow in a lot of our responses today. But we are very happy that you are here. And like all the shows, we start with a little intro of your adoption story. So if you would like, tell everyone what you'd like to tell us.
Okay.
I love that you blamed the slowness of the show on the morning and not like something believable like Zoom.
No,
It's
never
just, it's a bad
technical
connection this time.
difficulty.
Like, nope,
Never.
this is 1,000,000% us. It's totally our fault.
It's because I'm only a fourth through my coffee right now. That's why.
Oh boy. Sure. I was adopted from Seoul, Korea, when I was 3 months old and flew here to JFK in New York. And I spent a little bit of time in New Jersey. And then my family relocated for my dad's work to South Carolina. And that's pretty much where I grew up until I went to college. And then my parents were like, peace out, South Carolina. We're going back to New Jersey. So now I have like virtually no reason to ever revisit. Like I basically haven't ever gone back to South Carolina really. And now we're all just here in New Jersey. I live in Jersey City and my parents live in New Jersey. So I have an older brother who's my parents' biological son. He lives in California. Yeah, after school, I bounced around a little. In college, I did exchange to South Korea, to Ewha. And that's kind of how like I learned about Korea and Korean culture. And then after college, I worked for Abercrombie and Fitch in Ohio.
Cool.
Then I worked in San Francisco for the Children's Place. And then back to New York, where I basically worked for like any teen mall store. Pretty much like, yeah, Aeropostale, American Eagle, Aerie, Victoria's Secret. I also worked for Gymboree. So like just any mall store, I was working there.
That's cool. Was
Just
that a
super
specific
sellout.
title? I'm a mall logo graphic designer or
Yeah, pretty much my resume was like corporate fashion. I'll do it.
mini
Yeah.
malls.
Need me to eat
Discount
some anti-Ams?
bins.
Here for it. Great American
Pretty
Cookie
much,
Company.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so you grew up in South Carolina, which I assume is predominantly white in your neighborhood. Did you have any friends that were Asian or of any Asian descent or any BIPOC?
Our area was pretty rural, and so it was pretty mixed actually, like black and white.
Oh, okay.
And then there was like a group of Mexican people, and Latin Americans, but mainly from Mexico. And there was one girl whose mom was Filipino and one guy in a different district, like our rival district, who I think might have been Korean. I don't know. He was Asian, but I like just saw him occasionally. But I was telling someone else, I distinctly remember taking like a school trip to Atlanta to go like see a play or something, and like seeing Asian people on the sidewalk and just being like out the bus window, like, wow, like those people are like
Face
me.
to the glass. Yeah.
Like Atlanta, so metropolitan. Yeah. So that was pretty much how I grew up. Like people, I mean, I've heard this on your show before. People would be like, oh, are you, because, you know, like back then, early 90s, there's no like internet and Instagram. So people would just be like, and it's like the rural South. So people would be like, are you Chinese? Are you Japanese? Are you Mexican? Like, and then that was and then once they were done with that, they were like, that's it. And then I'd be like, well, I'm from Korea. And they're like, so that's in China?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Do you think more people would know about Korea? If surprisingly not. I mean, yeah, I always wondered about that too. Why people always, you know, just assume that I don't know, was another one. Of course, the major ethnicities of China, because that's, you know, the largest population. But Korea's, you know, pretty predominant. I don't know why people don't guess that one. Now, if I was like, I don't know, like a Pacific Islander, like, you know, Laotian or something like that, then I can understand. But
I don't know. I kind of get it, because until I went to college, I also had no way of knowing anything Korean or even Chinese or Japanese either, right? Like other than school and the math and stuff. So
It's funny that you got the Mexican label. I got that too in 6th grade. I'll never forget. I walked in the building the first day, and there was a Mexican student who was pretty popular, and people come up to me like, "Hey, are you his brother?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't think so. I don't know who this person is." I was like, "What's happening?" But I
you should have written it like, yeah.
Oh, right. I know. I messed up and remained unpopular for a while.
Yep.
So
Go back. Do it
I
over.
have made the mistake myself. I have to admit that I did do a wedding one time, and I thought the family was Hispanic, and not just because, you know, I saw them and I met them, but their last name was Gonzalez.
Were they Filipino?
They were Filipino. So, yeah.
The dang colonizers.
I know. So
That one's actually really confusing. I'm like, why? But then I learned my history, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
So you grew up with your last name of Cadamatre. We talked about a little bit when we were starting that some people get confused when they see that name or our last names. How has that been since you've been married and prior to changing your name?
I didn't really realize in a way that having an American, or I guess, Italian last name is a little bit of a privilege, honestly. I didn't really realize that till I met my husband, and we would talk about things like that and how he felt pretty self-conscious, like cold calling clients and things like that with his last name. And then I kind of realized like, oh, it might have given me an edge, like reaching out to employers or I don't know, just anything, making dinner reservations. Sometimes now when I make dinner reservations, I specifically use my maiden name or certain things. I don't know, like now it's kind of one of those things where like I basically grew up with not much Asian culture exposure or really any, I don't know, like I believe my family are good people and like inherently have good hearts and like, you know, welcoming and I want to say not racist, but I can't deny the fact that, you know, I grew up under a certain shade, I guess, right? And so I think it wasn't until I went to college and met other Asian people who had grown up Asian that I realized like, you know, they would tell me like, oh, they didn't seat us here because we're Asian. I'd be like, that's ridiculous. Like, what are you talking about? That would never happen. And then I think the more like I've been aware of these like prejudices, I'm kind of like, oh, is it real? But then there's part of me that's like, but I spent the whole first half of my life like not ever feeling this, not ever noticing it, even if I was alone. So there's a part of me that kind of struggles with like, is it in my head? Is it real? Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe sometimes it's just a coincidence. Maybe sometimes it is the prejudice. But like there was one time, for example, where my husband tried to book like a party for me at a hotel in New York on the rooftop. So he just wanted to reserve like, I don't know, a couple tables or something. And they basically were like really rude to us. And at one point we were kind of like, I think it's because you made the reservation And I was like, because last time I booked something here and they were super nice to us and really accommodating and like basically did the whole event like very differently. So I don't know. It's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, then I just start thinking about it a lot. Like, is it in my head? Is it a coincidence? Is it prejudice? Like, I don't know. But yeah, it has been something interesting, especially after getting married. And then there is an aspect to it where like before there was a lot of explaining, right? Like people were like, oh, why is your last name like that? Like, are you mixed? Like, you don't look mixed. Like, what is that Japanese? And so then I'd have to be like, oh, I'm adopted. Like, now people just assume like I'm Chinese. My husband's Chinese. Now people just assume I'm Chinese. And I'm like, great. Like, I don't have to do an explanation every time.
You're in the right continent.
Yeah. But that's also confusing too. Like, I mean, sometimes I laugh because I think my in-laws forget that I'm like raised, that I'm not Asian, like that I'm not Chinese. Because sometimes my mother-in-law, especially, she'll just be talking to me in Cantonese, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you're saying. Like, you want the salt? So, and I feel like I encounter that too, as I'm sure you guys and all your guests feel that sometimes too, which is also awkward.
I get it very frequently when I'm doing weddings and I'm photographing and the other family is Asian. They'll just start talking to me in whatever language, just assuming that the bride and groom, I guess, hired me because I could speak their language too. And so multiple times I just sit there as the parents talk to me and I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I don't understand.
You just hold your camera up, start taking their picture.
Yeah.
I'm just for the pictures.
I mean, it happens a lot. And I have been more self-conscious of, like you were saying, of race and just my own race and appearance from moving from California to Colorado now. I mean, I went to college here, so I lived here for 8 years. Never really had any problems. Like you said, I wasn't looking, I wasn't noticing things I never would have thought. But from going from California and, of course, in the current times, it has definitely made me more self-conscious. And I do look around or I do see things and I wonder, oh, is this happening because of that? And I don't know if I like that self-consciousness as much. I don't know how to handle it, I think, sometimes, because I'm like, stop, you're overthinking it. But so did you say you had in your form an Asian college roommate too?
I did. My roommate, it's so funny. I love her. We haven't talked for a long time, but we actually were on the same flight on the way home from our tour of the college. Oh. And her mom sat next to me on the plane, and she's Chinese, she's from LA. And her mom was so nice. And then she's like, well, if you guys both get in, like, you should be roommates since, we know each other now. And then we would chat on AIM, because that was the only way. And she was like chill. She was really cool, actually, but at the time I didn't know. I'm like, she's cool. She's like the only person I know. And so we signed up to be roommates. And yeah, like, I think I might have told Jerry this too. Like, one of the best stories about like learning about Asians and Korean is like when we were in college, we had orientation and there was like a play about like being a good roommate and how to live with your roommate.
There's a play about that?
Yeah, there was like a whole presentation play. And one of the skits was this one, the two girls in the room, and they were, role playing, and like, you can't keep leaving your kimchi out in the room. It's so smelly. And like, I remember like asking my roommate, like, Sandy, like, what are they talking about? Like, what does it even mean? And she was like mind blown. She was like, you're Korean though. And I'm like, and she's like, but you don't know like what kimchi is. I'm like, well, what is it then? Like, if you know, then tell me. And she's from LA, so she's like embedded in tons of Asian culture and lots of Koreans. And she was just like very hip as well. So, and I remember afterward we went to like the block party and there was like falafel and I was like, what's this? Girl. She's like, girl.
I really resonate with that because I didn't really know what kimchi actually was till we did the show. Apparently, I had tried it before, but I think my sister was a liar. So I'll go on record.
Wow.
Canon for the show that my sister lied about that. That was a lie.
Wow.
Love you,
back
Rebecca.
on, and
Still,
y'all can duke it out.
You're gonna get some text messages now.
What was it, like sauerkraut? Like
I don't even remember that instance she was talking about, so it's all good. I did have a question though. Speaking about being in college, you had mentioned you had went on an exchange program to Iwa and spent some time there. What was that experience like for you as an adopted person returning to the homeland for the first time?
it was freaking awesome. I mean, come on. I think I was 18, right? So, because I was young, my roommate and I, and actually my boyfriend at the time, also a Korean guy, we were like the youngest kids in our class. And I think for like various reasons, like I had skipped a grade, she had skipped kindergarten. I don't know, like maybe because of like the Korean school back and forth, he was just also young. So we were like the youngest. So I was like going to Korea. I don't know if I was even 18 or 19, but in Korea, they're like, oh, you're 19. You could drink. And I'm like, cool. And then like, basically, I'd gone from South Carolina, very rural, to Rhode Island, which is like, I don't know, like city beta. I don't know. It's like small city, right? It's like quaint, like safe. And then to Seoul, completely unrestrained. I mean, it was awesome. Like from that aspect, it was awesome. And then as an adoptee and someone who, had only seen like 3 Asians in Atlanta in my entire life, going to Korea was just like mind blowing for me. I mean, I've been back several times now, so it's really hard for me to like reconnect with that first feeling. But yeah, I mean, every person, and this was in 2005, so I think it's actually different. I don't know if any of you guys had gone back, earlier as well. But like I've gone back more recently, like with my parents or like with my husband, and it is a different experience. It's a lot more tourist friendly. There's a lot more tourism, and I see more expats. Like when I went there, you actually had to be worried about like racism against non-Koreans. Like some of the kids in my exchange class would get like, I don't know, like verbally attacked, or one person got soup thrown on them, which is pretty terrible. But on the flip side, as a Korean person, I felt like this immense acceptance and almost like love. And, like just like grandmas, like harmonies just coming up to me on the street, like rubbing my face, like, like, okay, and I'm like, you're like this total stranger, but you're just like, and, I was like a teenager in college, and it was summer when I went. And so I'd have on like my tank top and my shorts. And that was like very taboo in Korea at the time. And I'd have just like ajmas coming up to me like, oh, you got there, like, don't wear this. Like, what are you doing? Like, try to pull my shirt down and like cover, and it's just very strange. And like, just any person just talking to me as if I'm just like a friend, like, oh, like they could tell instantly, like, oh, you're not Korean. Even if I didn't open my mouth, like, so then immediately like, oh, why are you here? And then as soon as the adoption topic came up, they're like, oh, are you going to find your family? They would love it. We can help you. Like, oh, I have to take care of you. Like, here, eat this, here, take this. So it was really, unfortunately, and I've talked about this a little bit before with other people, like, it seems like a really different experience going back to Korea than for Korean Americans, which I feel like is a little heartbreaking for me, because the experience I hear from them is a little bit more of like disappointment from Korean people, right? Like, how come you haven't come back till now? How come your Korean is not that good? Whereas I would be on the side being like, 안녕, 하세요. And they're like, oh, Janchi, your Korean's so good. Like, you're so wonderful. So it was really difficult to see my friends struggle like that. But it was really like amazing, and probably a big reason why I go back a lot.
I was wondering too, like you said, you've been back multiple times after with your family, with your husband. What do you feel like it was important for you as someone connecting to their culture to go back on your own or with like your friend group first? Or do you wish that you would have, or was it different when you went back? Like you said, it was different experiences, but do you think that was an important step to go alone first? Because that's something I'm wondering. I've been planning this trip to go back, and at first it was like with my whole family and to make like a big thing of it. But as I've started to like learn more and just understand myself a little bit better, I wonder if I should go alone first and go on my own and experience that on my own. So I was wondering, as someone who had done that, what would either your advice be, or how was that different for you in that experience, and was that important for you?
You know, I've listened to like a few of you guys' episodes. Like I really enjoy them, and I always try to tune in when you guys are like on Clubhouse or doing your live chats and stuff. And I've read a few other adoptees stories, and I feel a little bad because I don't know that I've approached like my life and these experiences from the point of view as some of the other people that you guys have spoken with, that I'm so invested in like my adopted identity. I think at the time for me as like a 17-year-old, basically a child, and like a really dumb, terrible kid. I think it was more like, I'm Korean. I don't know anything about this. I'm gonna go check it out. It's free. And I can travel and like be free, be totally free. Like I didn't really know what, like my personality is kind of just like jumping headfirst in. So I didn't really know what it was going to be like. And I wasn't going there with this intention of like discovering my culture and my connected with my heritage. I feel like that kind of actually happened after I went. You know, I think I was dating a Korean guy at the time, and I think he like encouraged it. Like, I think you think it's great. Korea is so awesome. You'll love it. You're Korean. You should go. And I think I was just like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, sure, babe. You know, like, so, and I think after I got to Korea and after I took the classes and made Korean American friends that I'm like still friends with today, like Angie and a couple other people. Angie. And even when I go back, I still see, I mean, like I chat online almost every other day with a girl from Ewha who's the Ewha student. And, you know, like she just had a baby and like we talk all the time. So I feel like it was making those relationships and learning about Korea that way that kind of made me realize like, wow, there's actually like a lot of Korean adopted people. There's actually this whole culture. And that I think it almost happened like backwards for me. And so I guess like to answer your question, I think just in general as a person and at the time as like a young person, I think traveling alone was a huge life changer for me. Mm-hmm. Like I sometimes like my husband and I talk about it, he's always like, I wish I had done something like that, like traveled alone in college or whatever. Cause yeah, it just kind of forces you to like, I mean, back then I had a phone card to call my parents and I had a map.
I remember those phone cards. Yeah.
So like and you know, when I got there, I had done the paperwork wrong or something. So I thought I was going on like a week-long retreat before the start of school. And I got there and they're like, no, you didn't sign up for this. So I was basically in Seoul alone with like some money. And I had to figure out how to live for a week before the school opened.
Yikes.
And you're there, tank top and shorts. Just
my tank top and shorts.
Every Korean's like, you're clearly not one. I mean, you're one of us, but you're not one of us. Let me help you out.
But it was like a wild experience. I was just like walking around and I don't even know how it happened. Somehow I found a guest house. Like now in hindsight, I'm like, this is so shady. Like I was a 17-year-old girl alone. I just found this guest house and then I like met up with some Chinese American guys from Chicago. And they were like, you chill with us. Again, like terrible, you know, like looking back, I'm like, this could have been like taken, you know, but actually at the time, I think like I felt Korea was quite safe, you know, like my friend was telling me, you know, I was saying like, oh, how come there's so many small children on this metropolitan subway alone? Like young kids, like 4 or 5. And my friend was like, you know, because no one would do anything to them. Because if someone tried to touch them, there's all these like soldiers and, you know, there's all these like harmonies and one of them is going to say something. And then if someone messes with the harmony, then one of the soldiers is going to do something. So he's like, there's sort of, and they were, you know, like my friends, Korean American friends kind of explaining to me this like feeling of like Korea is so unified in a way, or like at this family feeling, I guess the Chung, right? Like, so I mean, I don't know if that was like a very simplified explanation, but anyway, sorry, circling back, I think going back by yourself would be great. because I've gone back now like a few times, and I think part of that has made it so that when I go back with people, I'm almost like the tour guide.
Sure.
Right. It's like, oh, here's the palace, here's the tower, here's the park,
Here's
like
the 63rd
here's
floor.
the temple.
There's the Hall River.
You know, exactly. Whereas like when I go by myself, I'm like, I'm going to go to this neighborhood and I just want to explore. That's like how I love to travel. Or I'll meet my friends, like, you know, what area is cool, or we'll just go to like the bookstore or something, or just go find an area and sit in a cafe. And I really like that. And then like when I'm by myself, I'll just go get dinner or something, and people will just talk to you, or the bartender will talk to you, or people on the street. I like that a little bit. It's a little different now as like a mom or like a married woman, but
Right.
I still think that, you know, traveling alone is nice, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's a little different.
Yeah, I love traveling alone. I went to Australia for 3 months, but it was a little bit different for me. Okay, I'm a guy, girl, and I was older at the time when I did it. I was 30. You were 17, 18 when you did yours. I would probably feel very lost, I think, at that early of an age if I was in a foreign country by myself. So I give you props for doing that and surviving for that first week. So I do feel, though, when I do travel, I like getting lost in a way, because that just really forces you to, you know, it's not like I'm on a guided tour. I don't have anyone to hand feed me anything. I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. And it just kind of forces you to do the work and to find where you're going and to learn something too, because the times I've ever been lost, when I finally figured out what I was reading or what I was looking for, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget how to read the train timetable. I'll never forget that the train, when it says 2 names on it, it's the start and the end destination. It's not the only 2 places that it goes. So So the things that I've learned when I was lost, I think, are very valuable. And so, Patrick, to your comment, I would suggest you go by yourself too. I think everybody does things for different reasons.
Maybe I'll go and then just get lost from my family. I'll be making eye contact with them, just disappear into the crowd.
But then they have to
finally blend into a crowd.
Yeah, because I can, exactly. Because I won't stick out like I do here.
I don't know. From what I've seen, you're a giant, so you might. You might just be like, oh, he's the taller Asian, the one that stands above all the rest of them.
Speaking of giant, too, I did see there's that photo on your page, Katie, of when you first took your parents there. Do you want to talk about that? Because that's something that I haven't done yet. I've never been there with my my family and my parents. I think that would be amazing for them to see that. How was that, bringing them there, having that shared experience?
Yeah, that was really amazing. I was actually pregnant, and my husband came with us too. And it was really amazing. We kind of made like a big trip of it because we felt like they might not go back. You know, like I think my parents feel like if they're going to spend a lot of money or spend a lot of time to travel somewhere, they want to go to different places. So we kind of like made a huge trip of it. We were in Seoul for a while. We went to Jeju Island, and where I had to drive, which was scary.
Is driving in Korea scary?
I'm like not a confident driver to begin with. So it was like a little nerve-wracking for me. Like most of the signs were like in Korean, and I was just like nervous. I don't know. I've never driven in an international country before. I've never driven in another country. But it was okay. But my friend also made me nervous because she was like, most people in Jeju are terrible drivers because it's the same thing. They're coming from Seoul and they don't drive, and they got their license to drive in Jeju. And I was like, oh no, like a bunch of terrible drivers plus me. But it was fine. It was fine. And my parents, they loved it. Like, I think there was a little bit of like, I don't know, I wanted them to be like so blown away and like so impressed. And I think maybe it made them be like, cool. You know, like I was like, isn't it amazing? And so they would be like, yeah, you know, it's cool. But they still talk about it. I think they had a great time. And it is funny, like we're just different travelers. Like we all went to France together, and they were like, we're going to go to Normandy and we're going to go on the tour of Notre Dame. And I was like, I'm going to just go walk around like this other area. Like I don't want to do those things. So I had to kind of think about that too, you know, like the things that I really enjoyed and valued when I visited Korea, which were like I think impactful for me, or just seeing like these tiny pockets of areas and like cool little neighborhoods with history. And for them, they're like, we want to see like the palace. We want to see like this demonstration. Like we want to see this like memorial. We want to go to this museum. So like we did all of those kind of things. And I think, you know, they enjoyed that. And we did a little bit of like my style, and they were like, this is cool. And they're like, but we're so tired from walking. Cause like you walk so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I've heard in Korea that the women wear heels and hike everywhere in those. Is that a thing? And did you participate in that?
I don't know. Cause like in '05 in Ide area, everyone was all heels all the time. Right. And you were hiking up these like massive mountains to like get to class. Like my friend and I would just stay out and eat till like 8 p.m. because we were like, well, let's wait for the shuttle when the shuttle bus starts, because we don't want to walk up that hill. And I've never owned like more pair of high heels in my life than when I lived in Ide, 2005. I mean, it was like high heels all the time. But like now when I go back, I don't notice as much.
Okay.
Maybe because I'm like a mom. And I'm just like, I'm wearing my sneakers, so whatever.
I don't have time for these heels.
Exactly.
But I do think it's like a little more trendy. I do, like when I watch dramas and stuff, they're wearing like cute sneakers, right? Like that's trendy now. And I feel like femininity, it's like a little bit different in Korea. Like some of my friends talk about how like US Korean Americans are in almost like a time vacuum, where like Korea keeps progressing and getting like more progressive, and like the Korean Americans who immigrated here are sort of like stuck in like the 60s.
That's interesting.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's still a lot of ladies rocking the heels, you know, on the side, on the subway and stuff, going up all those stairs.
So one thing that you touched on a little bit was your imposter syndrome that you felt. How, especially when you went back with your parents, did you feel any of that? I mean, I made that comment earlier because Patrick's fairly tall, but it looked from the photo that your dad is really, really, really tall too. Is he like, what is he, like 6'4"?
I think it's that my mom and I are really short.
Okay, that's what it is.
We're not heightist on the show.
Well,
he's like an average height guy.
Oh, yes. The photo, okay. I was like, wow, your dad is really tall in this photo. But now that makes sense. It's actually you and your mom. They're just shorter.
We're like tiny people. That's hilarious. That's hysterical. I think my husband might actually be taller than my dad.
Oh, wow.
that's amazing.
Because my mom, she's like 4'11".
Okay.
And I'm like 5 feet on a good day. Like if I stand up straight, you know,
heels, yeah.
I'm like, we're tiny ladies. That's why I need the heels. I think Koreans, they've gotten taller over the years, so they don't need the heels as much. No, you know what's funny is like when I first went back to Korea, well, not in college. Well, in college, yeah, because I was taking the Korean immersion program, and like I love language, and I really wanted to speak Korean. And I think subsequent times when I went back, I wanted to like speak a lot of Korean and like practice my Korean. But then I've noticed the last 2 times I've gone back, I'm just like whatever. You know, like I'll start with like a nice like 안녕하세요, and then I'll be like, "Do you have a table?" You know, like. And when I was with my parents, I noticed I did that more. Like I don't know if I was just more tired from being pregnant or like traveling with my family, or if I just didn't care as much, or if I felt like maybe I had a little more of a pass. Because also when people saw us with my family, they just immediately would speak English. So I think there is a little bit of that. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm curious. So thinking about like a lot of the points in your story, the things we've talked on in our interview, the things that you filled out in the form, you know, you talked about growing up just kind of like out on your own, just deeply white American, and then going to college and meeting like your Asian roommate. And like, so you've had lots of little experiences, and even what we talked about before with your husband, and now that you have a Chinese last name that you use sometimes, and those kinds of things. I'm curious where you fall on identifying as Asian American or Korean American, and how those identities have shifted over time.
I guess I have like a really terrible memory. So it's very hard to me to accurately remember how I felt or what I did as a kid. I want to say like back then, I was one of those people that was like, I'm American. right? Like, I'm just American.
Look at me, my cowboy
I
hat.
definitely. Well, and I would also like to point out that where I grew up, it was very mixed. It was very 50-50. So I did grow up very white American, but also Black American. It's the deep South, right? But yeah, like, I think my parents, they would also be like, oh, you're American, you know, you're American. You're just an American, you're from here. So, and I think that was like important for them to help me feel like comfortable and confident, like if I experienced any prejudice. But definitely now I'm Korean. I tell people I'm Korean American or I'm Korean. I think like usually I felt like I had to follow that up with like, but I'm adopted. But now I kind of feel like I just don't care. You know, I'm just like, oh, I'm Korean. And some of my friends kind of like laugh at me because they're like, you're actually like more Korean than us. And they're like Korean, like, you know, Korean American. They're like, you're actually like more. And one of my really close girlfriends, she actually teases me. She's like, sometimes I'm just amazed by like what is just in your blood. She's like, some of the things you do or some of the things you say. She's like, it's just in your blood. She's like, Korean blood's so strong. Like that's just in you. You know,
I get that too because I like spicy things and I like pickled things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also being raised like Italian American, like my dad is Italian. And I have heard a lot of people say Korean culture and Italian culture is very similar.
Interesting. I have not heard anyone say that, but I don't know that many like deeply Italian people, so that's probably on me.
I mean, I don't know that we're deeply, we're like Jersey Italian, you know? That's
I mean, that's its own kind of deeply Italian.
We're like Jersey Italian. But in college, because all the Korean classes I took were through Brown, because like my school didn't have language. So we had to do everything through Brown. So the college professor there, the Korean professor, she would say her favorite show was Everybody Loves Raymond. Right. And she was like, it's just like Korean families. I was like, oh, cool. That's my family, basically. So sometimes I wonder if like a bit of that culture overlap is like how I was raised. You know, it's like family first, keep eating. You know, we have to take care of each other, take care of and, you know, the grandma's always there. Like you always take care of your grandparents. We're always all together. Like my dad's like ready to move in with us. Like, I think in some ways it is similar. With that kind of stuff.
Was there a specific moment that you remember about just being like, I don't care to qualify how Korean I am by being, well, I'm adopted. And do you remember like the first time that happened, or just like a moment where you're like, I don't need to say this anymore? Because I think I've gone through something similar where now I'm like, I mean, adoption is an important part of my identity. I realize that is like having adoptee as an identity is not an important thing for all adoptees. But for me, I'm like, oh no, I think that this is a unique part of who I am that is important to me. But there is also some level of like, no, I'm Korean American and I'm adopted American, and those identities have actually separated from me. I don't need to feel like I need to qualify one with the other.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a specific moment. I think just gradually with getting older and then also, you know, and just feeling more confident in myself and not having to sort of like prove myself to anyone for any aspect of my personality. But also I want to say becoming a mom has made me value my time and also just how I present or just how I feel about myself a little bit differently. I mean, for me, becoming a mom is like, I guess for any mom is a pretty crazy life change.
Really?
And I just, you know, just that little thing. Huh. And I don't know that I feel like I need to spend time to explain to anyone anything about myself because I have I got something else going on. Like I need to like
do you see
keep this other human.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in a way, I think that being a mom has given me a lot more confidence and also has made me think about how I want my son to feel. And how I want, you know, him to look at himself and feel about himself. And, you know, I don't want him to have to feel like, oh yeah, I'm, you know, half Korean, half Chinese, but actually my mom is adopted and my dad, like, I just want him to feel comfortable with who he is. And I think like what you said, KJ, like being adopted is an important part of my identity. And I value it a lot, but I think it's sort of almost like, I don't know, it's like more of a personal detail. Like people don't need to know right away. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I also got a little bit tired of the follow-up after that explanation, which would inevitably be like, I know someone who's Korean adopted or like, and I'm like, well, that doesn't mean too much to me. Cause as you guys know, like all of our experiences are so vastly different. Mm-hmm. that just because we're all Korean adopted doesn't mean that we would even possibly have anything to relate to other than that one. It's like being like, oh, you're from the same town, right? And like, oh, like so-and-so's from there. And then you're like, cool. And then that's it.
I hated them.
Right?
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. They beat me up.
Yeah.
So it's really great that with the birth of your child that you said in your form that you wanted to have certain experiences for him as well, including language, which is something that I think all of us, well, I guess I'll speak for KG and Patrick, but maybe I won't. We really admire your Tigerboom Creative website and your language lessons and the creativeness that comes with that website. Tell us more about how you created that site, and was it for your son? When did all of this come together? And how have you been? How have you been doing?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I have been working as a freelance illustrator. And then, when my son was born, I had to take time off. And then with COVID, I had just started getting back into reaching out to my clients. And they were just like, look, we don't have money to pay for superfluous illustrations for fashion and lifestyle, such as like hospitality, like no one was doing that. So a lot of my clients got furloughed, and it was just really difficult, like to see that. And so I just took it as a sign to like take a step back from my freelance work as well and focus on my son, who I was now home with every day, all day. And I knew I wanted to give him like Korean exposure because, well, my husband speaks some Cantonese, and I actually think he speaks great Cantonese, but he doesn't. And he just like refuses to use it, which I feel like really bad for him for. And I wish he would use it more. But anyway, so like that was not going to happen in our home. So I just wanted my son to have like some bilingual exposure. And I felt like this would be a nice thing to do and part of, his heritage. But, I have like maybe intermediate level Korean. And so I started trying to research like books for him, like kids' books or books for me to help me like parent in Korean, because, even if I can like book a hotel or something, it's really different than saying like, do you need to wipe your bum bum in Korean, right? Like that's really
bum bum,
Exactly, right? And just even like I think here is more where the imposter syndrome comes in for me. Like if I present something to like on Tigerboom, like, oh, this is how you would say like, let's eat. There's a part of me that's like, is that how you would say let's eat? Like because in language, right, there's tons of ways, like even in English, right? Like, and actually I was on a Clubhouse with a couple of other Korean American moms who hosted a chat about like parenting in Korean for anyone. And I asked them, like, there's this song my son sings in daycare. It's like, today is Monday all day long. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'd love to sing that to him in Korean. And I was like, I'm thinking it would be like this. And I was like, but does that sound weird? And they're like, well, honestly, it sounds weird in English too, right? Like who would say that? Today is Monday all day. They're like, I think that's how you'd say it. Like, who cares? Just go whatever. It's just like a dumb kid song. And I realized like, I'm really overthinking these things a lot because I do feel like I'm not in a place, like I'm not a native speaker. I'm not Korean, like I didn't grow up with Korean parenting. So I don't feel really qualified, and people are reading these things and using them at home. I'm like, oh no, like, what am I doing? But I do feel like I wanted my son to have some exposure, even if it's not perfect. And I don't expect he would be fluent, but I just want him to, if one day he grows up and becomes interested, that he can say like, oh, well, you did that. Mm-hmm. Like basically this is all to avoid future guilt, mom guilt. Right.
I like it.
But no, I mean, it was really difficult to find resources. Like if you don't read or type, if you can't type Korean, it's very hard to buy the books. They're very expensive. And then you have to pay like $50 shipping because they're like going from Seoul to LA to you. So I just felt like there should be more, and so then I just started making them.
I love it. I think your artwork is adorable and so cute. One of your recent posts I just saw in the caption below, you were like, here's what we're doing. I'm adopted, so I would love to hear your traditions about people, and just, I think using that part of your identity to just to open dialogue, in a way that I think for us, like, that can be a really gracious opener. Be like, hey, I'm adopted, so I realize that I might be wrong about this, but I'd love to hear, like, what are your traditions and those kinds of things, because, like, for the three of us, something that we've talked about on the show is, like, a lot of the traditional quote unquote Korean activities and things is like, we'll just see it on a K-drama and multiple K-dramas, be like, oh, I guess around the Harvest Moon, which I don't remember what that festival is called at the moment, but Harvest Moon time, they play Go Stop Go, whatever. But I'm like, oh, that's a thing, that because I saw this in one K-drama and then I saw it again in Minari and then I saw it again. So I'm like, that must be a traditional Korean thing, but I have no idea. So yeah, I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, totally. I really value that a lot. And I really appreciate the community that has grown around Tigerboom, because it is a nice mix of mixed families, people who grew up Korean American, other adoptees that are parents now. And so it is really nice seeing like everyone's different perspective, because there is this a feeling I get, which I guess again goes hand in hand with the imposter syndrome, which is like, is my take on this like brochure Korean, kind of like what you're saying, right? Like textbook Korean, like where I read like, on Children's Day in Korea, everyone wears hanbok and plays Yutnori, and then so I'm like, is that like really? And people are like, no, girl. They're like,
fact
no,
check
girl,
really
we
quick.
go to Potoro Land. Yeah.
It's okay. You know how many times I had to fact check exactly what I was putting in the hotoks that I was making? So I was like, is there another ingredient in this?
Oh man, we didn't even talk about that. Yeah. Shoot.
Yeah.
Talk about that,
let's
Nathan.
bring it up right now. I mean, I assume that's the most popular thing you've sold on. No kidding.
Actually it is. Yeah. And I really appreciate you guys' participation. Like and it was like a big plus.
We were honored.
Yeah.
And one of the most made recipes.
Is the hotok?
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, people.
okay.
I think more people have shared that with me than any of the other recipes.
That's
Well,
exciting.
I came up with that myself. No one else helped, so I just want to throw that out there.
Literally, I don't even know if you said anything besides.
I don't think
Sounds good.
I don't think I contributed a single piece other than that looks great. We should go with
We've
that.
also seen Patrick's cooking skills lately, and
All right. All right.
Yeah, we're definitely cookists on the show.
that'll be the next show. Is we have a live show where Patrick cooks something. And
I'd love that. I'd
we all
love a
just
Janchi
watch.
cooking show.
Yeah,
Love that.
we would like a little Janchi cooking show.
We're
I think that would be
brainstorming.
kinda
We're trying to
fun.
figure out how that'll happen.
It
'cause
would
I
be
think that
fun
really
and ridiculous at the same time. So
Yeah, so that was really great. So for the listeners that don't know, Nathan, will you explain what you did? And actually, let's do this. Katie, explain the project that we contributed to, and then Nathan, explain your creation process of what we specifically contribute. What you specifically contributed to that in our
Just
name.
say we.
hey, you guys had your verbal confirmations.
Yeah.
Approval.
Yes.
Check. I really wanted, this was even before the shootings, and I just like the uptick of violence and everything, and even with Black Lives Matter, I wanted to do more to support my community and support the Asian community with the hate crimes. And but I just felt like donating, it's not enough, like for me as a person. Like I can't donate much. And I wanted to do more. And I was thinking like, what can I do more that maybe I could get more people to help donate? Or in the past I had done like, if you donate to the local business, or if you buy a local business gift card, like I'll just send you a print or something like that. So I was like, maybe I can do something like that with Tigerboom. And so created the cookbook and reached out to a few restaurant owners and friends, and food bloggers, and you guys, which I know like you love food, and so food oriented contributors, and asked to contribute the recipes. And we made like a little tiny cookbook, and for $5, people could donate and download it and print it at home. And actually, I should follow up. Someone bought it at a corporate level and sent me their receipt for like thousands of dollars that they had
Wow.
donated to.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they were like, so can you send me the PDF? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll send you whatever
it to
you want.
10 times if you want.
I was looking to send you
I can
1,000
send you
PDFs.
8,000 copies. Yeah. So that was amazing.
Wow.
And it did a lot. It got a lot more. had a lot more impact than I really could have hoped for, which is really wonderful. So I appreciate you guys participating.
Yeah, we were honored to have contributed. I remember when, I don't know who first said it, is like, hey, Katie at Tigerboom Creative wants to do a cookbook, and we want you to help create this recipe. And that, in my mind, was like, whoa, that's so cool, because I do love to cook, and so I instantly was like, okay, we got to come up with ideas, we got to come up with types of things, and we did. We brainstormed a little bit, but then eventually, I think, we had made some frozen versions of the hot dogs. I just remember thinking, well, maybe we should try to make this from scratch, because it seemed a pretty easy one, and this was going to be geared toward kids, family-oriented comfort foods, right? So I was like, yeah, kids would eat this, and I have my kids as guinea pigs to try it out. So I was like, let's do it. So I made it, and sure enough, they did eat it, and they liked it. They didn't eat the gochujang's tomato soup, but that was just my little addition, because growing up, I loved grilled cheese and tomato soup. So so that's why I tried to combine that and make it something a little bit fusion, I guess. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It's really awesome.
Nathan likes fusion.
I like the fusion. I am a fusion.
I think that's really cool. I literally just had grilled cheese and tomato soup last night because I've not been feeling super great.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, this is a comfort food. And then I think for breakfast, I had one of those frozen cinnamon hot dogs. And I was like, man, I wish that I felt better so that I could make Nathan's grilled cheese and tomato soup hot dog and gochujang. Yeah, like that would have been really cool, because I think, like, it's funny, Katie, something that you said earlier was like all of your Korean American friends are like, you're more Korean than us. But I think there is kind of that at least from me and from what it sounds like, you and I are kindred spirits in this, is that like, because we're adopted and because we like traveling and learning languages and all these things, we're like really throwing ourselves into this culture that we have in our blood, right? And so it's a fun way, a unique way to explore another culture. And because of that, maybe we are choosing, even though we are ethnically Korean, we're also choosing this identity to take on. Whereas like if you're Korean American, to whatever generation, you're just like, well, I mean, this is what I am, but like, it's not like a thing. So like, there are some things that maybe you are raised in, but like as an adoptee, and when you choose that, you're like, well, I deeply care about learning about this. So I do want to learn the traditions, and I do want to learn the language or the however we talk and kind of all of that stuff. So it's just been interesting. And like I think it is certainly as a byproduct of doing the show and some of the things around the show, I mean, like, have stopped feeling internally the need to qualify my Korean Americanness or my Koreanness with, well, I'm adopted, so I'm like not that Korean, or whatever, like then I'm like, no, right. I am that Korean. Like I'm listening to this novel, it's called Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. And they just like, it's a novel about two sisters, and they threw around like a nunchi joke, and I was like, I get that, and I don't even have to like look that up or like, I'm just like, hey, I understand that now. Like it's just little things that I'm so excited to celebrate and to think about. So yeah, it's been great. Anyways, I love what you do, and I'm glad that we're friends now.
Me too.
We don't want to keep you too long. We really enjoyed talking to you. I have one last question, because you put it on your website, and you talk a little bit about everyone has their definitions or their reasons, but you say every Korean means something different to everybody. So I wanted to ask you, what does being Korean mean to you?
Wow, way to end the show.
Good question, Nathan.
I was ready for like another dumb dad joke, and
I was 100% expecting a dad joke.
Yeah.
Hey, I have some meaningful questions every once in a while.
Moving. Just the question was moving.
Nathan, that was so good. Katie, don't even answer. We're just gonna shut the shit down now. Nathan,
cue the music. Somebody cue the music.
Walk off. Just kidding.
No pressure. I mean, when I wrote that, and I really believe this, and it is really what I believe and I feel is the heart of my books, Cadamatre books and Tigerboom, is that, and I think I'm lucky to have so many different types of Korean friends. Like I mentioned, my friends in Korea, I have mixed Korean friends who grew up Korean American, and I have Korean friends that live here that are from Korea, other Korean adoptee friends. And I think, and then also the people I've met through Tigerboom. And I think what I really want everyone to feel is that even if you perceive your identity in a different way, we're all Korean in some part. And so that we shouldn't have to feel that it needs to be qualified or, authenticized in some ways. So like if you are making hotak and you're like, oh, I don't have this ingredient, I'm going to add this, that you don't ever have to feel like, oh, I'm like lesser Korean. Because I think what I've learned from my friends and from this amazing community is that like even the most authentic of Koreans might just do that and they're not going to think about it, for even more than they're not even going to think, because they feel, that's like it's like a part of who they are and no one can really take that. So that's really what I want to give to families and especially children with like my books and my resources. And I think for me, actually making these things has helped me feel that confidence a little bit too. Like, I'm a very like type A straight, my husband makes fun of me. I read every manual we get. I fill out every warranty card. Like he'll want to set things up and I'm like, wait, did you read the instructions? Like,
I'm the same way.
We have to make sure it's the right way. And like when I did the language class, I'm like, I need the placement test. I need to make sure I'm starting the right way. Like, even if I know these vocabularies, I'm going to read. And I think when it comes to like identity, it's hard to not fall into that. Like, oh, I need to make sure I'm ticking off these boxes. And that's what makes me Korean. But what I want my son to feel, and what I hope all of like the Tigerboom community feels with these resources, is that there are no checkbox to be Korean or to be Korean American, especially, right? Because America is like massive. All of our experiences are a little bit different, So for me, I think being Korean is like, it's kind of this awesome, I don't know. It's like this awesome, like not like, I don't want to sound cheesy and say like superpower, but it's like this awesome thing that I have. Like it's this amazing connection to culture and history. And like, there's so many things that Koreans are so proud of, right? Like turtle ship and Hangul, right? Like, and just like, even from like from like an artistic point of view, like beautiful pottery, beautiful paintings, beautiful colors, beautiful fabrics, and the food, right? Food is so to me, it's like being Korean American. I just feel like I have this extra flavor, right? Like I'm Italian, I am part Scottish, Irish, I'm from New Jersey. I've bounced around the country. I have like this fashion and art background, but I also have this like Korean side too, which is like, I have a little bit of a special connection to these other things, foods and anyone can access these things. Like you don't have to be ethnically Korean, but for me, it's like, I feel a little special. Like, ooh, right? Like a little special connection
to these things.
Yeah. So, like I can watch the Oscars. I feel a little bit of pride. And my husband's like, you're ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, I'm proud. Like Korea.
Yeah.
You're
so wearing the Korean flag right now, right?
Yeah, I got my Korean flag. Like,
see this?
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, before we go, I just wanted to say, just thank you for what you do with Tigerboom. The way you like talked about it and described it here and put it in the context of your own experiences. I think what you're doing is so inclusive. And I love that it calls everyone in and it gives everyone a platform and a place to go. Because especially as adoptees, just in the conversations that I've had and been privileged to be a part of, that's what a lot of us are looking for, is a place to be included in and a place where we can connect with culture in that way. And I think you're one of the people providing the platform for us to be able to do that. So thank you very much. And also, I really love how animated you talk with your hands, because that's what I do in person. And I've been watching you the whole time do it, and I just love it because I'm like, I don't feel as ridiculous now when I do it because I know other people are out there who do that. And I don't have to go, what do I do with my hands? I can just let them free flow. And it's just been a pleasure for me to be part of this conversation.
That's my New Jersey Italian. Thank you guys. You guys also, I really value this platform as well and really love the show.
Oh, thank
you.
What you guys all contribute.
Yeah, we're honored. So where can people find you? I know Tigerboom Creative's website, Instagram. Go ahead and let us know where people can find you.
Yes, Tigerboom Creative is my Instagram handle, Facebook, the website, tigerboomcreative.com. And that's where pretty much everything is. I also have like a smaller account and smaller site for Cada Mini Books, CADA Mini Books, which is like what I'm publishing my books under. So that's like a little bit more serious. But Tigerboom is like where all the fun is. And I'll share the books there too. So that's like the best. Tigerboom Creative, printable stickers, everything.
Awesome.
Is there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a great interview. We really appreciate it. You taking the time to come on the show. And like always, for everybody, you can find us on Janchi Show at all platforms. You can email us janchishow@something.
This is the morning.
Boy.
This is morning, Nathan. He's like,
part.
wait,
I need more
how do I
coffee.
do the thing?
Janchi Show at justlikemedia.com. And yes. Anything else, guys?
I was just imagining those like your words being typed up on the screen and it just being erased, like just because Janchi dot. Oh wait, Janchi Show.
Erase. Janchi this erase. Yeah.
Hilarious. No, I think that's it. I think that was it.
Thanks, guys.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much, Katie.
We are probably going to take a break or not. We
don't know yet.
actually know how the show is, how this particular episode is going to end, but something will happen and you'll hear it after a little bit of music. So here we go.
Mystery.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Well, we took a break and then we just kept that break going forever. So it's just me closing out the outro. Just me doing the end of the show. I will tell you, this is the worst because when I don't have my co-host to bounce off of, I'm just like, I don't know. So anyways, here are our plugs. You can find us at Janchi Show on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. And you can send us an email to janchishow@justlikemedia.com. I will say, for the people who have been sending us emails, first off, thank you. Secondly, y'all are very verbose. So that's awesome. I never expect to get very long emails. It's just like, hey, what's up? How you doing? But for some of the people who've been writing in, they are long emails. And I'm great. It's great. I'm here for it. You can support the show by going to janchishow.com/support. You can also support the show by buying merch if you want to do that. That is at janchishow.com/store. Really, if you just go to janchishow.com, it'll take you where you need to go, mostly with the menu bar. So that's a thing. Let's see. You can find me at KJ Relke wherever I want to be found. You can find Patrick at Patrick in the World on Instagram and at P Armstrong on Clubhouse. He is doing some things with Katie Gagel, centering adoptee stories, Asian adoptee stories on Clubhouse. So definitely tune in whenever he is live, and I will also maybe be there every now and then. I don't know. He always picks Wednesdays, which I can never make. So what's up with that, man? Anyways, you can find Nathan at Nowak or Nowak Photo for his photography stuff. He's in Colorado, so if you're in that area or know someone in that area and they need a photographer/videographer, I'm just going to say this and Nathan can correct me if it's wrong, reach out to him. That'd be great because I know that he is working on rebuilding his client base, and there's lots of people who need photos for life events or just for funsies. So what a fun date idea. You're welcome. Let's see. It is Wednesday. Oh, hey, this Sunday is Mother's Day here in the States, so if you have a mother that you would like to celebrate, or if you are a mother and feel you deserve to be celebrated, then go holler at some people. Make sure that Sunday is a good time, or as good as it can be. Please take a moment and leave us a rating or review on Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. I forget that they changed their names. And also, if you're listening to this, thank you for listening, and tell a friend. Word of mouth is probably the best way to share what we're doing in the Janchi Show, or word of mouth like via Facebook groups or something like that. But that really helps us. All of those things help us get noticed, help us to be the little podcast that could. So yeah, if you have appreciated these stories, we would appreciate you sharing that with someone. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Okay, bye!